Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. They have taken untold millions that they never toiled to earn, but without our brain and muscle, not a single wheel can turn. We can break their haughty power, gain our freedom when we learn that the union makes us strong.
Okay, hello everyone. I think we're about ready to get started here. Hello and welcome to EWOC's political education event, What is a Union? And thank you to our panelists, Michelle, Cora, and Robert, and to our participants across the country for joining us this evening. My name is Sarah Staley. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm an East Bay DSA member in Oakland, California, who is participating in a rank and file jobs program within my chapter. And I'm also a member of EWOC's political education team. So what is EWOC? Well, the Emergency Workplace Organizing Committee is now a little over a year old. It was formed as a response to the rise in capitalist exploitation of workers during the COVID-19 crisis. And we are a project of the Democratic Socialists of America, DSA, and the United Electrical, Radio, and Machine Workers of America, UE. EWOC is a totally grassroots organizing program with hundreds of volunteers across the country whose goals are to support workers organizing in the struggle for more equitable pay, benefits, and better working conditions, to offer guidance as they organize to form unions, and to provide them with resources, training, and network support to help win their demands. So what is the purpose of our event tonight? What is a union? Well, we hope this event will expose the nuts and bolts of what it means to be in a union today, as it were. We're going to hear from union members and staff in healthcare, academics, and hospitality about how they navigate within their unions and the broader labor movement. And now we're going to go ahead and move into introductions from our panelists. Panelists, we're going to take about 2 or 3 minutes each for each of your introductions. We're going to start with Michelle, Cora, then Robert. And panelists, if you could please tell us your full name, your preferred pronouns, where you are located, your union and your affiliation and your role in that union. And as part of your intro, we would love you to answer the very broad question, what does union mean to you? Again, 2 or 3 minutes, and we'll start with Michelle. Thanks so much.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Michelle Gonzalez here, she, her pronouns. I'm a nurse in the Bronx, New York. I work in a hospital known as Montefiore Medical Center. And I am a part of the labor union NYSNA, New York State Nurses Association. I am a union delegate, and I'm also on my executive committee. What that means in the long and short of things is that I get to play a part in decision-making in my structure of my local hospital with regards to our contracts, our benefits, and a lot of other things, but we'll talk about that later. I'm also a member of my local community board 7. Part of my process of getting involved and being more active in my union has been realizing you have to be active, not just only in the union space and in the workplace, but also in your community. So I'm on my community board, and I try to do as much stuff with the local community organizations, different organizations that are here in the Bronx and in New York City that are working to help end disparity in Black and Brown communities. So I guess I'm gonna jump into what does unions mean to me? I think that was the question, right, Sarah? Okay, so what does union mean to me? That's a loaded question, but union to me means our ability as workers to fight for basic living wages, for our rights as workers, and to ensure that all workers are treated equally and fairly in the workplace, that we have the work protections that we need, the safety protections that we need, and that we are able to have a conscious voice in our workplace. That's what a union means to me on the long end. So we'll talk more later though. Bye guys.
Thanks so much, Michelle. I appreciate that connection to community. We'll pass it to Cora.
Yeah, hello everybody, and thanks so much for inviting me. So my name is Cora Berganitos-Crespo, and I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the president of Local 4100 with UAW, that is representing postdoctoral researchers at Columbia University. And I'm also a member of Socialist Alternative. And just to clarify like what a postdoc is, because I think that most people don't really know, it's so we work in the universities, but we're doing mostly research, like scientific research or all type of different research, you know, from environmental to you know, historical research. We don't teach that much, some members do, but mostly our main work is research. And for me, a union, like I would summarize it like collective power as workers. You know, as a postdoc, when you know, I'm an immigrant to the United States, totally unfamiliar with the United States system, and I felt very powerless in many ways. And for a period during my postdoc, I even felt really, really bad, you know, in a really dark place, and was through starting conversations with coworkers that gave me, and many of my colleagues also that started organizing the union, a new sense of hope and really a purpose to make it clear. And in some ways, I feel it's like through the union is when you make your individual problems, your personal challenges collective, you know, and political, and it's not your fault, it's the system. And not only that, but you actually create a tool that allows you to challenge and change that system for you and for everyone else. So yeah, that's summarizing what a union is for me, to be honest, one of the most empowering things that I felt in my life.
Thanks, Cora. And that collective power can really help you workers feel less isolated within their union, for sure. So thanks for that. And Robert, pass it to you.
Thank you. Hello, comrades. My name is Robert Hughes. My pronouns are he, him. Excuse me. I am a union steward at Unite Here. It's a food service. Think of it as it's a hospitality union, food service, casinos, gaming, and another aspect of our union that I'm blanking out right now. I do apologize. I am a union steward at a place called two universities combined into one, Indiana University, Purdue University at Indianapolis, IUPUI. I've been there for 8 years. I've been the union steward for about that same amount of time, 8 years. I am also a co-chair of our local DSA chapter, Central Indiana. So in the short time that I have to say what unions mean to me, which I'll just put it simply, I hope to go into it as our time goes on. Unions, for me, if you know some of my backstory, which I will dip into a little bit as time goes on, is it gives me a sense of power, a sense of control, a sense of what I have a say at the table. I have a say into my work life, and I am empowered to empower others to have that same say, have the same power. So thank you.
That's great. That collective power seems to be a theme here. And please do use that what does union mean to me as a question guide as we move into the next portion of our event this evening. So now we're going to spend about 10 minutes. Thank you for those introductions on panelist questions. And we will be taking questions from participants watching this evening across the country at the end. And participants, if you have those questions for panelists as they come up, feel free to type those in the chat and send those to our facilitators here, and we will be fielding those to panelists towards the end of our evening. And so just to get everyone on the same page of goals again, before we go into questions here, what we're attempting to do tonight is help debunk any misinformation about unions. I know there's a lot out there. We're going to address the overall low membership numbers in this country. Of course, discuss why unions are still a vital part of the labor movement today, despite all of that. And we'd like to honestly address how new union members might have to navigate through some pretty intense union bureaucracy in order to organize. And hopefully through all that, we can define some common language for folks like dues, arbitration, collective bargaining, authorization cards, concerted activities, boycotts, lockouts, strikes, etc. We know there's a lot of terminology involved in union life. And as someone who's new to the labor movement myself, I feel like I have a pretty good broad overview of the history of labor, but I'm excited to get into the nuts and bolts with you all myself. If these questions repeat any information, please forgive me. You can just use these as a jumping off point to help us explore these ideas this evening, and I might interject with some follow-up as we go along. So we're right on time, so we can spend about 10 to 12 minutes on each panelist answering these questions. And we're going to go back to Michelle first. We're going to start with you again. So we understand that you've been both an active committee member and a delegate in New York State Nurses Association. How would you explain, is it NYSNA or NYSNA or SNA, excuse me, to those who aren't familiar with it? And how did you first get involved? And then since then, how has your idea of unionism changed? And what are some of the different roles that you've encountered within your union? And please, we'd love to hear about some of the challenges and victories that you've been a part of. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Sarah. So, okay, I think let's start with the first question. How did I get involved? I got involved maybe about 6 or 7 years ago now. So I started by going to my union's contract negotiations. We'll start there. So contract negotiations to me at 22 did not seem to be that important. I was just out of college. I had just got my nursing degree and this new nursing job, and I didn't think it was going to be that important. As I started to attend these meetings for contract negotiations, I started to realize that union life is a lot more complicated than when they just tell you to sign your dues card. It's been through that process over the last few years that I've realized a lot of things. But basically my jumping off point to getting involved was starting to sit on these different meetings for the contract negotiations. So when we're talking about contract negotiations for us personally as nurses in the New York State Nurses Association, I'm talking about it specifically with my hospital. So I'm not talking about it with anybody else's hospital. Their contracts, they negotiate for themselves. But in Montefiore Medical Center, we had already health insurance, we had a whole bunch of things, right? So it's like, what do you fight for? Well, I don't know if you guys know this, but nursing happens to have some of the lowest safety standards in all of the professional industries. Construction workers have much more protections than nurses do. Many will ask, why do construction workers have more protections than nurses? Why do they have safety standards more than nurses? The answer isn't that the politicians or any part of the government cares more about the construction workers. It is because since nursing is a female-dominated industry, we have fought a little bit less hard than construction workers. Construction workers will boycott, will strike, will take away their labor for them to ensure that their contracts and their negotiations are upheld, sorry, excuse me. But with that being said, what I am trying to direct myself to is to the fact that us as nurses, we don't have those protections. And that was something that we were starting to fight for in our contract negotiations in about 2012. So in 2012, we were looking around and trying to figure out how do we get ratios. And let me just really quickly try to explain what a ratio is. As a nurse, I should only take care of a maximum of 6 patients. Every patient past my 6th patient puts that patient at a 7% increased risk of dying. This is because as a nurse, it is clinically important for me to be able to assess and look at you as a patient and say, oh no, this has changed. We need to send that person a CAT scan right now. But if I cannot attend to people in a timely manner, people are at a higher risk for dying. So in 2012, we were attempting to find better safety standards. And I was realizing that even with this contract negotiation, it was hard to get the level of support we needed, because we didn't just need the support of our nurses. Of course, our nurses wanted safer standards. It's how do you convince the community, the politicians, that when the nurses are saying we need this, that they're going to follow up behind us and say, we're with the nurses. The nurses are saying they need this. We're gonna support them through and through. So that's a little bit of my backstory. Long story short, it is 2021 and we are still struggling with ratios. This is to tell you that this is a long haul deal. Workers' rights is not a flyby or a flyover. You don't get to come in and say, I'm gonna do this for the next 2 years and my workplace is gonna be brilliant, immaculate, the best workplace ever. We all want it to be, I promise we all want better. But I am here to tell you guys all tonight, it takes a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, a lot of organizing yourself and others, and sticking to it and knowing that even in the long run, even if it doesn't work out right now, in the long run, you guys are gonna keep pushing for workers' rights. And I say that kind of generally because what I've realized over the last few years, as I've worked with NYSNA, the Nursing Association, is that it is bigger than just the nurses. All of my coworkers deserve rights. The person who drops food trays in nutrition, they need safety standards. And this all came to light during the COVID pandemic. So I'm gonna try and segue a little bit. I don't know if I'm a little bit all over the place. I apologize if I am, but I'm gonna segue over to some of the challenges that came about with COVID. This is because I realized a lot in the last 2 years, especially with the pandemic. When the pandemic first started, I used to go home. I live with my parents. I used to go home and tell my parents that I thought the hospital was trying to kill me. Around March 15th, I came home and I told my mom, I know they're trying to kill me. I don't think they're trying to kill me anymore. I know they're trying to kill me. And it was like I had realized like capitalism really was not only my friend, but it was my enemy. They did not care about me, my coworkers, or my community who was dying at an disproportionate rate. With that being said, around March 15th, we had ran out of masks so that we could protect ourselves from COVID. And the hospital had instituted a policy that we would just reuse the mask. One shift I came to work, when they told us that, they said, well, you guys need to get ready because we're running out of masks and you guys are gonna have to reuse masks. And this is the beginning of organizing, right? The beginning of organizing is go talk to your coworkers. There's a problem, go talk to your coworkers. How do other people feel? Because you have to assess, are other people as angry as you are? Don't ever go against anything by yourself. The purpose of organizing, the purpose of a union is that you are strong with the people behind you. With that being said, I went to my coworkers and I asked them, I said, guys, how do you feel about this? This is crazy. This doesn't make any sense. Like this goes against everything that we've learned in school, everything that we've studied about infection control, epidemiology. What are we doing? Everything's getting thrown out the window. So it's about 7:30 in the morning. My coworkers are like, here goes Michelle on her soapbox again. But they're also upset and they know that they're scared at this point. So we're trying to figure out, what do we do? People are like, let's just walk out right now. Let's leave. And I said, we can't do that right now because I don't know if that's a good idea. But what we can do is we can organize and talk to the other units, talk to the other ICUs. I'm an ICU nurse, and there's like multiple ICUs in my hospital. So I told everybody, we got to talk to the other nurses, find out what other people are doing. Are they accepting this? Because if we all don't accept this, then the hospital has to do something. But if MICU is the only one that says we don't accept this, we're gonna get castigated and we're gonna get punished and we're gonna get retaliated against by the hospital. So that's the beginning of organizing for us there. I first talked to my coworkers, then I convinced them to talk to other ICU workers. And this kind of trickle affected, right? So everybody starts talking to each other. Somebody comes up to me and they go, but Michelle, what if they really don't have any more masks? This, you know, you're asking for something and they're telling you they don't have any. And I said, World War II, they needed parachutes. They took nylon from women's stockings. They needed steel. They got people to find steel in their recyclables. With that being said, in a war, they can figure out anything. They can make a parachute. They can make a plane. God damn it, I'm at war right now. Somebody needs to get me my parachute and my plane. I don't care how they do it. But this is a country that focuses on this military complex. And if the military complex needs something, they jump. But when me and my coworkers' lives were online, they were like, oh, sorry, you're just gonna have to deal with it. And I did not want to tolerate that. I didn't want to tolerate that for myself. And I didn't want to tolerate that for the people around me. And I told them that. I said, are you really going to accept that? So in that moment, we all made a decision. We were going to have a protest / rally outside of the hospital. We did the protest. We got the media to come. And this is not just me standing out there. I made sure the other ICU nurses and med-surg nurses and anybody who was afflicted by this had came out to support me, because I didn't want to be the one on the chopping block by myself. You can't do things by yourself. You have to organize. So once I knew everybody was kind of on the same page, we went to the media. When we went to the media, within, I'd like to say, 24 hours, the hospital went and changed their whole thing. They said, oh, we got masks. We're going to give them 1 mask a day, which still did not fit to infection control, but it was much better than what we had had. So I think the reason I tell this story is because when we're talking about victories and when we're talking about challenges, they're sometimes in the same story. They're in the same part of you getting to where you are trying to go, where we're all trying to go, which is to elevate workers' rights. Workers who deserve to have healthcare, who deserve to have a living wage, and deserve to have the safety protections that they need. And what did the COVID pandemic prove to not just nurses? Nobody was protected, not the grocery worker, not the nurse, not the doctor, not the respiratory therapist. Everybody's lives was put at risk. And I think like this has been a pivotal moment for me as a young woman, and I hope it's a pivotal moment for all of you guys who are on this call. The pandemic has to make us realize the workplace can no longer be a place where you punch in and clock out. The workplace needs to be a place where you are organizing and having conversations and figuring out how do you fight back? Because if not, they win. They win. They want you to roll over and die and say, oh no, they don't have masks. They don't have the protections. They're never going to give it to us. The squeaky wheel gets greased. Make sure you make noise, you organize your workers, and you let people know what is happening at your workplace. I think Sarah had mentioned earlier a few of the terms like lockout and rallies and sit-ins. These are things that I can't get into right now because my 12 minutes are coming up, but there's power in numbers. There's more than just this seminar right now. Labor Notes does how to train the trainer and a whole bunch of different labor organizing webinars and workshops for people. Please, please, please stay active, learn the tools because they're there, they're available to you. And people, I'm telling you, if I want to fight back, I want you to fight back because I can't fight back without the other workers fighting back. This is all of us have to like really kind of take the reins of our workplaces and not give in to, we're all stressed, we're all losing our minds, we all had enough, but try and give yourself that little 10% of energy to try and figure out how do we improve the workplace. And that's it for me. I'll see you guys later. Good luck, Robert and Cora.
Thank you, Michelle. I want some of your energy on this issue. That was great, and thank you for the work that you've done during this pandemic crisis. Your industry obviously laid bare the inequities around safety and so many things that COVID exposed. So we really appreciate that story. We hope that you'll stay safe in the future, and I really love that notion that the victory and the struggle is in the same story, because we really heard that through what you just told us. So thanks for that. And so next we're going to go ahead and pass it over to Cora. And Cora, questions for you. If you could just please tell us a little bit about your local. What does your day-to-day as a union president look like? Different lens there. And how has your work as a member leader evolved as this local came into being, which is a very exciting story. And how do you work to make some of those union processes, those endless collective bargaining and contract meetings and terminology more accessible to your members? And I'm very curious about this as well. How is organizing with postdoc workers unique or similar organizing to in other industries? Go ahead, Cora. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much, Sarah and Michelle, for that great start. So yeah, like, I mean, my day as a union president, it's like has to be put also in the context that, so we are a totally new local, so we are starting everything from scratch, and we also formed the local during COVID. So obviously that's an additional challenge that makes everything much more complicated. And so all throughout our campaign of unionization, we had a majority membership or supporters, but now we have to sign everyone up as a member again. And during COVID, has been very difficult. That's like our main goal, really, still. I mean, we've made a lot of progress, but now that the university is kind of opening up, we are really starting to be able to have those conversations in the workplace that were so crucial to really build the union. And it's not only COVID, but one of the things that I learned being the president of the local is like everything is stacked against you. Like, of course, a big part of your role is to communicate and fight, honestly, the administration, with grievances and workplace issues that come up. And of course, the administration pretend to be nice, but you can tell that they don't miss any opportunity to really miseducate members about the union and create potential complaints towards the union. Like, to put an example, our contract for the first time guaranteed time off, vacation time, and also that you can be paid for unused vacation at the end of your appointment. So the university implemented a timesheet tracker to track the time, and they basically said that that's the union adding bureaucracy and really making it look like it was our fault, which of course it was not. So the way to change that, it's like, okay, members are angry about this, let's organize, let's talk about making a delegation to different administrators to say what is the type of tracker that we want that really works for us and not for them. And then you also have, like, it's not just the university, but also the entire system. It's set up not for workers, like the IRS, the Department of Labor, just to put an example, to incorporate the local to the New York State. As a company, you do it like this. As a labor union, you have to go to a board, take a paper from here, make everything way more complicated for labor unions. And I think, like, that's really just a reminder, that once you get recognized as a local, it's not that things become easier. It's just that the battle changed, it changed fronts in a way, changed the character. And the same critical power that you needed to build in order to create the union, to win an election of the union, to win a contract of the union, is the same power that allows you to really navigate all these bureaucracy, all these administrative burdens, that it's having a majority membership. And I think, like, it's also very clear that emails are not enough. You have to be in constant communication, one-to-one with members. To put an example, the other day I was organizing with an steward, talking to a member. Really, she reads every email of the union, but just talking with her, realized that she has an issue that we can help her with, and that's something that only happens through a conversation. And that's why it's so important to be in constant communication, be really proactive about reaching members and also non-members, like to really be able to engage constantly. Otherwise, I think that we have the danger of just moving as a local with the most active members. And really, we know that change only happens when there is a majority of workers fighting for the same thing. And I think like for that, for me, definitely what it's very crucial is to have a good team of people around, like with different perspectives, vital experiences, backgrounds, like in the executive board, obviously, all the stewards, and workers, activists that just help, talk to their coworkers and be involved in different working groups on issues we have, etc. And in terms of how my work has evolved, like I was one of the first postdocs also talking about forming a union at Columbia back in 2015, I think it was. So yeah, it's a long walk, as Michelle was saying. And I think like in some aspects, it has changed a lot, but at the same time, fundamentally, it has not changed that much. As I was saying, it's just the front of the battle that evolves, but your role, it's always the same. Like when we starting conversations about forming a union, me and another postdoc, like we didn't know each other and started independently. We had like very specific individual issues, like personal problems. And then the initial stages was just a lot of talking with coworkers, like listening a lot, telling our stories. And that doesn't change at all the time. Listening and talking one-to-one is the most important thing. And once you establish that there is a fertile ground and you move, to file for an election, sign authorization card to demonstrate that a majority of workers want to have a union. In addition to listening, you become an organizer. You start learning how to move a person from an initial hesitation to be convinced that a union is a good idea, how to explain someone why they have to get actively involved, talking to their coworkers. How do you inoculate workers about the different tools that the university is constantly using to fight the union, and that they are able to spread way more efficiently than you. They have better emails, they have communication with all the bosses, and that's terribly crucial, that you are doing that one-to-one work to really, make sure that a majority of workers really are aware and able to defend the union when the battle comes down. And yeah, like I think like again that was very crucial at that moment. I was in the organizing committee with many others to really bring those conversations, what we learned, and brainstorm together and workshop the best way to move forward and convince people. And then once we start negotiating our first contract, again, the process is very similar. Like the front changes, and of course, you are in the table. And I was not, I was sitting in all the bargaining negotiations, but I was not a member of the bargaining committee per se. But yeah, like in reality, the conversation with the administration is just one conversation. The real power, it's in your ability to really organize a contra campaign. That's what I was involved, really transmitting the information of what is being discussed on the table, engaging coworkers, and being able to use tools to really show the administration constantly that this issue is important for a majority of postdocs. This other issue is important, and really be able to push and push. And now as president of the local, really, we have a tool that it's a contract that establishes some rules. And there are, of course, a lot of one-to-one grievances and workplace issues that need to be resolved urgently. But at the same time, you can miss the big picture, that is your ability to really win these cases. It's not in the contract. It's not in how much you yell or how nice you are to the administration. It's in the power that your union has as a collective. It's in how strong is your membership, how many members you have, and if you are able to generate unity behind the different issues. And and then of course also, like, we are the first postdoc local at a private university in the United States, and we are also the first postdoc union local in New York. And I think like we cannot lose our historic role to a certain extent. And there are thousands of postdocs in the city and many other workers that have very similar issues than us. And we also want to be able to use our union to establish those links that Michelle was talking about, like the links beyond Columbia University, like, and also use our union to counteract this neoliberal narrative of the last decades that the unions are like another HR department of the company. No, that unions are really our collective power, and revitalize that idea that militant unions and militant labor movement, it's a very necessary thing to fight for, and we are exploring also other issues in which we can use our local to link with other postdocs, on issues that we can fight beyond Columbia. And in terms of making like terminology and processes accessible, of course, I think like that you have to be very, conscious when you are communicating with social media or emails, and try to use words that are, accessible or try to define. But I think that we all have a tendency to look for shortcuts. And the reality is, as I was saying, like at the end of the day, the most important thing is really be able to have one-to-one conversations. And our local, especially, we are all from all across the world. The majority of us are immigrants, from many different countries, like many different languages, many different perspectives of what unions are in our home countries. And I think like being able to have that one-to-one conversation, and really adjust, your experience to their experience, it's extremely important. And I think also, keeping in mind the big picture, that really what a union means, like that sense of collective power, it's something that you don't teach, you feel in a way. I think like, it's something that sometimes we forget, but I think like keeping ourselves connected to that collective power, it's something that we have to strive at every step of the way to really engage more and more workers, finding our common objectives and understanding that by fighting for your needs, even if are not my needs immediately, I'm fighting for mine because tomorrow you are fighting for mine, and that's how collectively we can really enhance our working conditions and our voices. And then in terms of postdocs, like postdocs, yeah, it's I feel like most people don't really know what a postdoc is, and even some of my friends, I think they don't fully understand what a postdoc is yet. But yeah, I think like one of the main differences, but with the more traditional sectors, but maybe similar to some of the more modern sectors like Amazon, is like we have a very high turnover. Like people are coming and going relatively quick, although there are workers that stay for a long time. And I think we have to really continuously be organizing, which is bad in a sense that, requires constant resources, but at the same time, it's a really good thing because it keeps you on your feet of constantly going to talk to members. But the main difference, I would say, in some ways, is that researchers are just now starting to acquire consciousness of workers in a way. Like academia, in a generation ago, it was a little elitist place in a way. Like, you make a postdoc for 2-4 years and then you become a professor with really good working conditions. That's not the case anymore. Right now, like really postdocs have become cheap, very well-educated labor of academia. And we are starting to acquire that consciousness of worker, but there's never been, for instance, a strike of postdocs in the United States, and that's something that I think we need to as we become more conscious of our role as workers and producing this much money to the university, we are hopefully starting to change that. And I think that also like there is a certain tendency towards individualism in academia. We have our labs with our own bosses and whatnot. And that's something that we also have to counteract. But I want to just finish saying like, this is something that has happened before. In the 80s, clerical workers were not considered workers. They didn't even consider themselves workers. It was like, why would they need unions? And obviously right now, it's totally understandable that they have unions and powerful unions. So I'm totally confident that we're starting to do exactly the same with academia and postdoctoral researchers. And yeah, we have a fantastic path to walk.
Wow, thanks, Cora. Kudos to you for all of the organizing work that you've done within your industry. And it sounds to me like that collective power, what I'm hearing really starts with those one-on-one organizing conversations, which seems like a simple concept, but when we're all being, siloed off and they're divide and conquer tactics being used by employers all the time, turnover rates are high in various industries, just having those continual conversations and keeping that work going sounds really important. So thanks for that. We're going to move over to Robert now. And Robert, for those of us who don't know, please describe what is a steward and what are their functions within unions. We're curious how you got into this role as a steward within your union, and how do you manage the responsibilities associated with this role? We're assuming there's some pitfalls that you have to navigate through, and there might be some balancing acts that you have to engage in between workers and employers as part of your position. So if you could describe some of that. And again, do you think the hospitality industry is unique or similar to these other industries we've heard from tonight, or other industries in general? Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you to all, particularly to Sister Michelle and Cora. Thank you for your wonderful stories and sharing your experience. I am all the more richer and wiser to have sat and listened to what you beautiful people of color have said. So in order to really to give you a sense as to what I'm going to hopefully briefly talk about, I'm going to try to make this as brief as I can. I want to show you. It's not. This is our union contract. This is our union contract. I could sit here and tell you of all the wonderful things in this sheet of paper, all the decent health care, which I never had before, the raises, which I never had before, paid vacation days, which I never had before, medical time off, dental, eyes, health care, which I never ever had before. But let me go back. Let me really highlight something what Cora had said, and let me build upon that. I see union, or the reason why I'm in a union, or unionism, or trade unionism, whatever you want to call it. I see it rooted in what we call the radical Black tradition. I see being in union is an ultimate self-expression, is the realization of your value as a human being on this earth, and seeing that value in other people, namely your coworkers, and then be more expansive, have that spread out to your surrounding community, block, neighborhood, city, county, state, nation. Where no, in other words, it can scale up as long as high as you want it. So if I have value, then I want other people, my coworkers, to have value. We get together and do a long process, come up with a contract like this. Now, how do we from there to here? How do we do that? How do we do that? So let me briefly tell you, in order to answer that question that I just asked, let me briefly tell you a little bit about my history. I'm 47 years old. I've been twice homeless in my 20s and 30s. Grew up and lived in post-industrial towns. Got it through neoliberal trade policies, NAFTA, Muncie and Anderson, Indiana. I tried to do what everyone expected me to do: go to college. Couldn't handle it correctly for various reasons. Flunked out. Came back home. Was shortly rendered homeless after. Grew up in basically I grew up emotionally, spiritually, and psychologically in a homeless shelter, which is a whole hell of another story, which I'm not going to say. I could be here for an hour. Went back to school, got a job, went back to school, moved out, was trying to make it on my own in the world of capitalism. I had a job. I'm gay, homophobia, low wages. I worked in a hotel for 10 years. This is from mid 90s to my last day, the day before Halloween in 06. 11 years. Guess how much money I was making when I clocked out for the final time? $8 an hour for about 11 years. Not treated very well. So, I have all this stuff, all this negative sense of self-worth because I'm black, big. I'm a big black gay man, big black gay man, and all this other stuff. So when I was rendered homeless a second time, even though I did learn a lot from my experiences of me being homeless in my 20s, I was in a way, and I really needed I really needed some new opportunities. So through a fluke, my best friend knew someone who lived in Indianapolis, Catholic worker, which is a whole other story. Came down here to Indianapolis, got a job, got a new place to stay, new family, new friends, new everything. Everything was made new for me. Couple years before that, I finally, this is after I dropped out of college, finally realized what I wanted to do in my life. Oh, I want to work in the labor movement. I came from a UAW family. How in the hell how in the hell could I get in the labor movement, Robert? I'm literally homeless, sitting on my uncle's couch. About 2 years later, here I am working in a unionized job. I was pushed to being a union steward. I was pushed to being a union steward because my president, my chapter president, who I was living with at the time, living in community with him at the time, wasn't living with him at the time, was living in community at the time. Anyway, he said, Robert, I think you should be a union steward, and I'm going to make you a union steward. So here I was, a guy who never was expected to lead anything. I'm dead serious. I was never expected to lead anything. Why would someone choose me to lead anything? Job for the first time in my life, union steward for the first time in my life. So we have here in this contract, we have here in our contract what's called a labor management meeting, and we meet on an official capacity with management about once a quarter, something like that. Basically, whenever we want to. Anyway, so my first inkling on just what sort of power that a union had was came to the room, talked to our GM. His name was Chris. By the way, he's an asshole. Still asshole then, still is an asshole now. Anyway, I said, Chris, we just opened our cafeteria. They had no mats at all. No mats at all. You tried to be working on the in food service 6 to 8 hours on your feet with no mats. Yeah, your dogs are going to be hurting. So I basically said, Chris, we need mats. So Chris literally looked at the executive chef. He said, "What are you going? They need mats. What are you going to do about it?" About a month later, we got brand new mats. That little thing, that little thing was a tangible reminder of us what unions could do, and what my role was a part of that doing. So and from there, I went from strength to strength, victory to victory. As it's been difficult. Oh yeah, it's been difficult. We've lost our lead organizer because due to COVID and the various other things. We've lost, how I don't know how many our members have died because of COVID and the various other things. So it's been, things have not been rosy. This document is an expression of my value and my coworkers' values as human beings. We're saying to the universe, we are human beings, because as one man said some time ago, all labor has dignity. I am a human being. Michelle, you're a human being. Cora, you're a human being. Sarah, everyone is human being. They are endowed with dignity and honor. And that should be reflected everywhere they go, everywhere they do, from work to home. And unions is an imperfect tool. It's an imperfect tool, but our main and most powerful tool we have making our vision that we have for ourselves, for our families, real in this world. That is something that we must hold on to today. So I don't know who's all listening in the audience. I know some of you, maybe you want to be in a union, great. Some of you maybe want to work for a union, wonderful. Some of you may want to do a union campaign, wonderful. But always remember, no matter where you find yourselves in the labor movement, no matter what struggle you're in, no matter what campaign you may be in, no matter what union job you may be going for, remember, 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 you are empowering people to see themselves at a higher self-worth. And not only additional to that, you are trying to build that self-worth not in an individualistic manner, as what Americans is so infamous for, but in a communal manner, hence the word freaking union. There's no I in union. Okay, so remember, please remember that. Thank you.
Very nice. Thank you, Robert. I appreciate you sharing your personal story and history. I really appreciate the use of the contract as not only a symbolism of you know those little tangible results that you talked about, but also kind of the bigger picture. I thought I saw that working in both ways, so that was really great. And I also appreciate just acknowledging the role of unions in the radical Black tradition. So thanks for bringing that into our conversation as well. And we are about to move into questions. We have a few minutes left for questions from participants. And, you know, based off of what Robert just said, because I'm hearing that so much of as we refer to it as business unionism is directed at contract negotiations and bargaining and the endless meetings and things like that. One question that we got from participants this evening, and I'll put this out to all panelists, so whoever wants to answer can go ahead and jump in when I finish, but what are some strategies, because of all the endless bargaining and contracts, for generating that class consciousness among fellow workers? We heard that the conversations are a good start. And also the tandem to that question, what are some strategies without scaring those that are suspicious of unions? And I would add those that are worried about employer retaliation. You know, maybe you can debunk some of the misinformation about unions here with this question. So would anyone like to tackle that first around class consciousness and more democracy within unions?
So I'll kind of take a crack at it, Michelle, back here. Because like I was writing some notes while everybody was talking. And I think one of the things that I was writing down was like union dues equal to the member, that the union can fix it. You see, that's my magic wand. So I say that's my magic wand because now, unfortunately, as a leader, I get looked at as a faceplate of my union, right? Which is okay, but it's like Robert said, there is no I in union. Michelle does not have big mouth so that I can go and rah, rah, rah for everybody. We have to do this together. Union dues do not fix the problem. The union dues pay for our abilities to have lawyers who look at contract language, because I most certainly am not a genius in contract language or negotiations. Therefore, the union, as Robert indicated, is us. The union and the bureaucracy that is allowed to happen kind of happens because we as workers have said, somebody else is gonna fix it. Let them fix it. The solution does not come from the union. The solution does not come from the union staff. The solution has to come from us as rank and file workers. And that's where we get union businessism versus rank and file unions. And so I think I just briefly to hit one of the other questions I saw in the chat, I think somebody was talking about like, how do we affect our larger structures, right? Like when we have a national or a regional thing and like people aren't hearing us, which we have similarly in New York State. There's 47,000 nurses in my organization. And I can very clearly tell you, we are not all on the same page with things. But that is what the employer, and that's what capitalism wants. They want us all to fight and bicker over some of the small, minute details. But what we got to remind each other as workers is that we are all on the same page when it comes to our rights. We all want living wages. We all want healthcare. We all deserve those things. And so I think like what I'm trying to get to is union bureaucracy exists. It is there. It is a challenge. Do not let it defeat you. Do not let yourself as a leader become the one person who has to come up with all the decisions and all of the plans and all of the solutions, because that is part of union bureaucracy. When you as one person make decisions and figure things out on your own. That's not how unions work. Unions work best when we're all having conversations and coming up with the best solution that works for the best amount of members. And I will pass it on to whoever wants to answer.
Thanks for that response, Michelle. I guess there's no I in union, and that solidarity is not just a slogan, right? We have to keep doing the work and having the conversations to get there together. Does anyone else want to tackle that question around class consciousness within unions and building more militant union democracy together?
I can jump on with my 2 cents. So yeah, like I think that that's such an important question, right? And I think it has been, I come from Spain that my father was also a trade union, and he always remembers when in Spain, as a union member, the unions transformed from a class union to a business union, and how that process happened. And I think one of the things that it's, as a president right now, it's so easy to get yourself back down into, these small little things, like you're being pulled out into so many directions. But then I think that really what class unionism means is like the solutions are collective, right? That it's not me in a room with the administration solving this issue, which of course you have to do sometimes, like that happens. But then it's like, how are you looking for every single opportunity in which you can, as I was saying before, put workers in contact with their collective power, to realize that, it's in being together and united that we can actually have the ability not only to enforce our contract, but actually to continue asking more. Yeah, and I think that it's when we realize that we have power, when really as our consciousness as workers opens up to really continue asking more and more, things that even we didn't think that we could have before, and I think as Robert was saying, also when we realize our value as workers. And I think really in some ways, the role of the union is, or the workplace is the best place to really realize that, your bosses are always trying to squeeze more and more of you. And only, there is no compromise in a way. There is no way to find a sweet balance, no, it's always a constant battle. And you really need to be constantly pushing, to gain more and more and make your value as a worker real and felt.
It sounds like that collective power hopefully can lead to some of those collective solutions. And then in that struggle, hopefully we build some of that class consciousness that's missing from unions today. This has been such a rich panel full of such diverse perspectives that unfortunately we are just about out of time here for questions. So I'm going to wrap it up. I want to give a big thanks once again to our panelists for your time and participation this evening, and everyone here who is watching us live, and to those viewing this later on EWOC's YouTube channel. And thanks to DSA and to my fellow Political Education Committee team members supporting us behind the scenes in our Zoom panel this evening. I'd love to direct participants to please check out EWOC's website to find out how you can get more involved. You can fill out our Talk to an Organizer form there to get support for you at your work site. And you can also download a free guide available on the website, In Case of Emergency, Fight Back, which can be a really helpful starting place if you're thinking about organizing or forming a union at your workplace. So that's it for this evening's panel. Thanks again for joining us, and please take care, everyone. We're sending you solidarity from EWOC's political education team, and we'll see you here next time. Good night, everyone.
Inspiration through the workers' blood shall run. There can be no power greater anywhere beneath the sun. Yet what force on earth is weaker than the feeble strength of one? But the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever.